Hey everyone. I stuffed myself with dinner. It's not because I had a. Alright, well, obviously, we're moving on to the next list of our individual seasons of Friendship is Magic. Obviously, our next stop is the shortest season of the show, Season 3. Honestly, as a whole, I find Season 3 to be a mix. I think, obviously, because the season's 13 episodes instead of the usual 26, there's a lot of things to consider with this season because the episodes in this season are not bad per se, but there are a couple noticeable ones. So hopefully this will go by quicker than the last two, given that it is a shorter season. I think maybe it was probably just in time to prepare for season 4. That's probably my guess, but this is what we're working with here. So thank you for joining me, miss. So with all that said, let's just get into it. So next up, our top 12 My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 3 episodes. Number 12, Spike at Your Service. Do I even need to say what everybody else has said about this episode? How basically this is another one of those episodes where basically there are so many character 180s you really want to ask the writers what the hell were they thinking. Obviously the main contributor of this episode was, as the title suggested, it was a Spike episode. And basically this episode reaffirmed what I felt about Spike in the first 3 seasons. Basically, his writing is so insipid, annoying, and moronic, it made me think that everything I've said about his character up until this episode was absolutely justified. The fact that essentially he basically followed Applejack around, mostly because of a misunderstanding, feeling that he was completely indebted to her, it was like, dude, get over yourself. And on top of that, the fact that he took everything so literally, I literally wanted to see physical harm on him. That's how insufferable he was until the last few minutes of the episodes where all of a sudden, when he saw through the main six's facade of the Timberwolves, he all of a sudden became Albert Einstein. Obviously, the main contributor of why this episode is awful is the contrived plot convenience of Spike the Dragon Code. Now, as I said when I did the review, considering that there could be some potential world building, given that in spite of how awful Dragon Quest was, what if there was a chance that Garble basically taught Spike about a code for the dragons? If it was something that was carrying over from that episode, as awful as it is, I would have been more accepting of it and it would make more sense. But the fact of the matter is that Spike basically pulled this dragon code out of his ass, and as I theorized, it never showed up again for the remaining 6 seasons, so basically they just threw it away. I really just hated this episode so much. It's really, to this day, there is no hesitation that this is without a doubt the worst episode of Season 3. Really, the only thing I really laughed at the episode was Pinky and the mustache gag, and the reason why it worked there better than Ghostbusters was because it's Pinkie Pie, don't question it. But aside from that one joke, this episode was insufferable. And essentially, as I said, this basically made me think that all the complaints I made to Spike and all the initial appearances he appeared in up until this episode and all the criticisms and shit I gave him were absolutely justified. Alright, number 11, Flame Shields Up. Number 11 is Magic Duel. I know I hear so many defenses for this episode, but I really hate this episode. I really do. Now, I think what my hatred from this episode comes from is disappointment. Obviously, the return of Trixie was not really the main reason why I hated this episode, but it suffered the same problem I felt with putting your host down, because of how downright unpleasant it was. I really hated seeing the suffering of the citizens of the Ponyville, and yes, I understand that Trixie was getting brainwashed by the Alicorn amulet, but it felt like that a lot of the time, sitting through the second act after Trixie beat Twilight in the first Magic Duel, it basically was just really unfunny and kind of mean-spirited to watch at times. And the thing I hated about this episode was with Fluttershy and her writing. So let me get this straight. So basically, when Bridal Gossip, The Mysterious Ne'er-Do-Well, Spike at Your Service, or Rainbow Falls is a character 180, everybody calls out on the writers and says that they fucked up on a main character. But when either Magic Duel or Princess Spike does it, that's fine, we'll just swipe it under the rug. We'll get to... But my point still stands. I don't understand why there are so many people that give Fluttershy's writing a pass where she acts like an absolute coward even after Twilight was practically banned from Ponyville and everybody in Ponyville was enslaved by Trixie. It really angers me how nobody gives Fluttershy shit for this. And it's hard for me to say that because I do love Fluttershy as a character, but her writing just angered me so much how she was a complete coward, especially after the character development we saw in episodes in Dragonshy and Hurricane Fluttershy. And of course, another thing that I have to give this episode shit for is the Magic Duel itself. While the second duel I will give is creative, one of the things that I did when I did the re-review, which was actually one of the first Clippus reviews I actually ended up doing, because it was one of the episodes where I couldn't win back the copyright claim at the time, one of the things that I constantly compared Magic Duels was the Hanna-Barbera cartoon SWAT Kats and Radical Squadron, and the episode that was similar to this, Enter Mad Cat, and kind of gave the explanation of why the stuff in that episode worked, whereas stuff in Magic Duel didn't work. Like, for example, the other thing I hate about the episode was the fact that everybody dismissed Fluttershy when trying to talk about the Alicorn Analyst and just straight up ignoring her. It worked in SWAT Cat for the climax of Mad Cat because, well, it was being done by Lieutenant Steel, and Lieutenant Steel is a pain in the ass. Whereas in Magic Duel, everybody was basically a moron that just completely dismissed Fluttershy and not caring about what they had to say. And I also bring this up because the action in a cartoon that's practically almost 30 years old, or a little bit over by this point, is a lot more high stakes and adrenaline than the actual Magic Duel itself. Yeah, I might be biased when it comes to action cartoons, but it's like at this point, after the epic battle we saw at the Camelot Wedding, the show has literally no excuses at this point. And of course, the thing that absolutely angered me was Trixie's half-assed apology. I didn't buy it for one absolute second. Even to this day, no matter how many defenses I see of this episode, I did not believe that shit for 1 second. Now, I understand that some people can make the argument that Twilight is trying to be more forgiving, but the fact of the matter is, after all the shit Trixie pulled, and yes, I know that she was... But considering some of the wording she said even after her and Zecora tricked her into basically giving away the Alicorn Amulet, she basically used the words, "Why aren't you writhing in agony?" That's not somebody that's worth basically giving an apology to. And kind of makes her future appearances and Twilight doubting her all the more credible. Now, despite all that, the main reason why I still think that in spite of how much I dislike this episode is that I still think it's better than Spike at Your Service, because at least the training that Twilight undergoes with Zecora is actually very interesting, and it goes through the next steps of her learning the lessons of friendship. And that's literally the only reason why I think Magic Duel is better than Princess Spike, but this is one of those episodes that I just hate but everybody else likes. Alright, number 10, Just for Sidekicks. I cannot believe I live in a world where there's not one, but 2 bad Spike episodes. Just for Sidekicks was basically one of 2 episodes that served another point of basically the which was the introduction to the Equestria games. This episode, on the other hand, is basically the main point of Spike essentially being a greedy prick and essentially watching over all the pets of the main 6 and having no idea how to control them. Especially Angel, but Angel's behavior is not much better either, and just seeing Spike basically he constantly get walked all over the place and his greedy ass is basically put in place. It's definitely a sight of a hole, but essentially that just makes it for a rather boring and annoying episode up until the last few minutes where, unlike Spike at Your Service, learns his lesson. He does understand that he done screwed up, especially when Angel is about to get him in trouble, and he basically owns up to his mistakes. And that's basically something I can say. The more can I say for what he was like in Spike at Your Service or Trixie and Magic Duel. So him actually learning his lesson is the main reason why this episode's only number 10. But number 10 out of 12 episodes is still not a good thing. Alright, number 9. Apple Family Reunion. Now, I'm actually one of those people that I really don't get the hate for this episode, like, at all. Like, I don't get the legitimate criticisms of it. Now, I understand this is also the episode that basically began the theory about Applejack's parents possibly being dead, and her basically trying to modernize the Apple Family Reunion. While it is interesting to see what the Apple Family Reunion is like, and the fruit bat scene is definitely very enjoyable from a visual standpoint until it goes absolutely haywire. But I guess really just generally, I found it enjoyable, but at the same time, a little bit boring. It was definitely nice to see Babs Seed again and just to see how much had changed with them. But I just think that with Applejack just being so preoccupied trying to make it the best family reunion ever instead of just letting things be, it kind of dragged the episode down. However, unlike some other reviewers, I really don't see why this episode gets a lot of hate. Especially the song Raise That Barn, where some of the criticism for it is basically it is a montage song. But I've listened to the song by itself and I got into it. So I really don't understand the hate for this episode. So I still like the episode. It's not one of my absolute favorites. I really don't think it's bad. I just think there are some episodes that are, well, better. So yeah, Apple Family Reunion, I really don't think it's bad as people say it is. I honestly think it's kind of an overhated episode. I just like the other 8 episodes, well, better. Number 8, Wonderbolts Academy. Obviously, I'm not in the military, so I don't know the ranks and risk and all that stuff. But I think seeing Rainbow Dash start to basically put her step forward into becoming basically her first steps of becoming a Wonderbolt and learning more about it. As I said in the review, as a lot of people say, especially with the introduction of Lightning Dust, it was basically the contrast with essentially Season 3 Rainbow Dash interacting with Season 1 on Rainbow Dash. Yes. And I understand that was the point of Lightning Dust's character, and honestly, just the fact that she was able to get away with a lot of stuff just kind of annoyed me, and the fact that Spitfire was just not willing to look past it, and basically put her in charge of Rainbow Dash was a bit annoying. Another thing I honestly didn't like about the episode, honestly, was Pinkie Pie and the care package joke. Like, it was actually one of the running Pinkie Pie jokes in the series that I actually liked less and less. It really just wasn't. I really just didn't find it that funny. Really, the only thing I liked about the episode was obviously the megaphone joke at the beginning of the episode. Now, I did like the instrumentals of basically what the military life was like, and the seeing Rainbow Dash being put to the test, and seeing when her friends get put in danger by a twister, she was willing to throw herself out of the way to go out of her way to rescue them, and I just like how she basically calls out both Lightning Dust and Spitfire, and she was even willing to drop her dreams because she wants to make sure that her friends were safe. But I do like the message that Spitfire does give before she ends up leaving. That the Wonderbolts isn't about being the best. It's not about just pushing ourselves, but it's about pushing ourselves in the right direction. And I really do like that part of the episode. So while there are hints of the episode that I really just wasn't the fan of, I think the initial start, and I think ultimately the payoff for the episode was definitely nice to get through. I just feel like there are just some episodes I think are, well, better. Number 7, One Bad Apple. Alright, look, I am not the person to talk about when it comes to the experts of bullying. Was this the best bully episode to be addressed? Not really. I understand that basically the moral can be a little bit contradictory, and on top of that, it gets kind of ruined by Sweetie Belle's irony statement, but nothing that really, I didn't hate the episode like other people do. On top of that, Bad Seed is a catchy as hell song. Now, I understand there's not really much I can say about this episode. I just really liked the episode, and I just didn't get what the complaints were. I do like the aspect that basically even when people are considered bullies, they're probably having troubles at home and they're dealing with their own issues. And believe me, I was like that once upon a time, and it was a time in my life that I wasn't proud of at all. When I was transitioning from 5th to 6th grade, and it's a part of my life that I don't want to relive. And it's something that I'm not proud of. So I like the aspect, and they address the idea, but I think that maybe, like Applejack said, this all could have been avoided if they just talked to her about it first. And I found the veggie salad joke kind of funny. Yeah, it didn't make sense, but I just still liked it. So yeah, this is another one of those episodes that I just really just don't get the hate for. I just don't get it. Anyways, it's not bad, but at the same time, I can understand this episode's criticism, so I don't think it's good either. Alright, so obviously we have a definitive half point. The other 6 episodes I actually like. Number 6, Games Ponies Play. Like I said, I feel like this season there's just a lot of episodes that I seem to enjoy, yet for whatever reason a lot of people seem to dislike. Games Ponies Play is essentially another episode that I actually like a lot. I kind of wish that this episode actually kind of came out first before Just for Sidekicks, mostly because if you switch the order around, the story, and especially with the ending of Just for Sidekicks, does make a lot more sense. I think if they kept the first couple of minutes and basically they kept the rest of the plot, I definitely think it would be a stronger episode. Like I said, this was actually the episode that introduced the idea of the Equestria Games. As I said, basically MLP's version of the Olympics. Yes, there is the episode, the misunderstanding of basically the main 6 using some country bumpkin with Miss Harshwini. Yes, you know that confusion is going to be for a mile away. But I really like the humor of this episode of the main 6 trying to practice on the train and they end up getting hurt. Rarity trying to desperately fix Cadence's vein and giving the exaggerations to Twilight. And also Pinky's yo, and then yes, when they realize they got the wrong pony. I like the episode, and I also like that Rainbow Dash is also put into a role where she basically let her excitement get the better of her because she didn't want Ponyville to suffer the same fate as Cloudsdale of not hosting the Equestria Games. So yeah, this is another episode that I kind of think is overhated, and I don't really get why it's disliked. Alright, number 5, Magical Mystery Cure. I think this episode basically kind of boils down to it being a 22-minute musical. I think basically, the opening really kind of caught me off guard, where like I said, the episode's basically a 22-minute musical, where the songs of the episode kind of remind me of the songs of the Prince of Egypt, where essentially they keep the momentum of the music going forward. I think really just the thing that I just couldn't get into was the fact that, well, I think the randomness of basically seeing what my cutie mark is telling me, yeah, like, that was basically like, what am I looking at? Or as I put in the episode, basically quoting that scene in the Nostalgia Critics A Simple Wish review. But I do like how they give the explanation of how it ended up happening and why it happened in the first place, and that it's not simple as the cutie pox. And of course, we have to address what was one of the biggest controversies of the time, of which even I was guilty of this, was basically Twilight becoming an alicorn out of the blue. This was basically because at the time, I think because this was a short season, I think everybody thought at the time that Season 3 was actually going to be the final season. So the fact that Twilight ended up becoming an alicorn out of the blue from a unicorn, after all the stuff she learned from both Season 1 and Season 2, it basically kept kind of coming out of left field, but it made a lot of sense. The only reason why I don't think this finale is better, and as far as finales go, really quick, I do think that it's definitely better than The Best Night Ever, but it's not as good as The Candlelight Wedding. And one major fact of it is just because I think the moral is absolute bullcrap, as it basically they have to basically give a lot of contrived plot conveniences to kind of explain why Twilight becomes an alicorn, which is not true. I'm taking back that retraction statement now. But I think the moral overall, I think, is basically confusing. While Twilight's growth definitely makes a lot of sense, and basically her figuring out herself from Starswirl the Bearded and becoming an alicorn, I know it basically was an excuse for Hasbro to start selling toys of Alicorn Twilight, but it did make sense, but I just think that the moral just doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. So, like I said, I do still like Magical Mystery Cure because obviously True True Friend is obviously a great song, and I think it got nominated for an award or something. And as far as finales go, it's, like I said, it's better than The Best Night Ever, but it's not as good as The Camelot Wedding. Number 4, Too Many Pinkie Pies. This is one of the funniest episodes I've seen in a while. Basically, this just shows what happens when Pinkie's bright and bubbly personality gets completely out of control when she ends up making duplicates of herself, and basically he shows how, well, sometimes her zaniness can get a little bit out of hand. And this is also the introduction of her episode that mentions her Pinkie strength. This episode was definitely really funny because there was a lot of Pinkie gags I definitely liked. And I definitely like how the main thing, it's his way to kind of figure out the real Pinkie Pie, is essentially making paint dry. And it's honestly a very humorous setup for me. The only thing I would nitpick about the episode is essentially the fact that Twilight and Spike couldn't grasp the fact that out of all the crazy bouncy Pinkie Pies that were causing havoc in Ponyville, the one that was acting completely depressed, they could not realize that that was the real Pinkie Pie. That was literally the only nitpick I had about this episode, because as we saw for the first 3 seasons, Pinkie was practically never depressed until she thought her friends were abandoning her in Party of One. So, honestly, seeing Pinkie be depressed about something is an absolute rarity. Not the character, but you get my point. That was literally my only nitpick with the episode, the fact that Twilight, the smartest of the main six, couldn't figure it out, and the fact that they were willing to risk putting her basically through a magic spell to bring to the Mirror Pond. But like I said, during the paint drying segment, I did like all the gags. And I definitely like the moral where basically you don't need to overexert yourself to hang out with all your friends. You basically can exert your energy spending time with some friends and know when to spread out your schedule. So, other than that one major nitpick, I still like the episode. Number 3, The Crystal Empire. Honestly, this is a really great season opener. I really like the fact that we get more world building in regards of the Crystal Empire, and honestly the ideas of what it was like for magic and how essentially it is a test for Twilight to learn. And obviously seeing Cadance in shining armor again after they just got married was also a sweet treat. And I think just the atmosphere and the fear of the episode, especially the scene where Twilight, I think she's back in Camelot and Celestia's sculptor, is just like, damn, that just breaks my heart. And it gives the idea of what happens when dark magic exposes your deepest, darkest fears. And King Sombra, who, even though, while we didn't really get much of from the premiere, just his backstory I found was very interesting. And just his slithery presence when he comes back definitely is very impressive. And the fact that he was one of the main villains that actually canonically died is something to very think about. But I think what I really like about this premiere is that up until this point, Twilight is usually the one to figure things out and to set things right. But in actuality, when Sombra basically has her in an iron grip in an unwinnable situation, it's Spike that ends up saving the day. And the reveal of Cadance being in the Crystal Queen was definitely a really big shock to behold. And I really love the designs of the crystal ponies. Not just the crystal background ponies, but also the scene where everybody gets crystallized. I really like that scene a lot. It was definitely a great season opener to really expand the world more and honestly give more depth about the ideas of magic and probably something that would be more things to come. Number 2, Sleepless in Ponyville. And this was one of the few episodes where I felt like that when I had to review it the second time, because it was another one of those episodes I couldn't get back the copyright claim, where I felt like I half-assed the review. But it is still a great episode. This is essentially a Scootaloo-focused episode, since I think up until this season, Scootaloo honestly got the least development out of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, since we've had a couple of episodes surrounding Apple Bloom, and I think we've only had like one episode surrounding Sweetie Belle. But up until this point, we never got an episode that focused on Scootaloo and why she looks up to Rainbow Dash so much. And I really like how basically, well, we also get a lot of very funny memes. Sweetie Belle's puppy dog eyes fans to convince Rarity to go camping with her, Rarity making her slave, and Sweetie Belle swinging 99 bottles of oats until she actually collapses. I think there's also a meme that represents like your phone battery or something when it's on for too long, and then when it hits zero, she collapses. I definitely found that to be humorous. I think what I also like about the episode, how basically Scootaloo tries to show her best that she's not afraid age in front of Rainbow Dash, but it's clear that when the story that she tells about the scary stories that I'm actually kind of curious to know what they're like, get the better of her, she starts to have nightmares about it. And I think easily the best part about this episode is essentially seeing Princess Luna come in. Her first time appearing in an episode that's not a premiere or a finale since Luna Eclipse. And we basically see how since Luna Eclipse she's become more respected. And I like the effect that she had put in the dream world, where basically those little spreads and the little hint of seeing Princess Luna in there, and her explanation of how she basically, well, goes into Pony's dreams. And of course, I do like the conversation that Scootaloo has with Rainbow Dash, and Rainbow Dash opening up to Scootaloo that she was scared too. And we do start to see the two of them bonding more, and it would definitely be like what their relationship would be like in the future. Overall, Sleepless in Ponyville is a solid episode. It's a great character for growth for Scootaloo, seeing her relationship with Rainbow Dash start to form, and also seeing the idea of what Princess Luna's role is to being the Princess of the Night. There's really almost nothing about this episode that I can really complain about, and this really should be number one, but I think you know what number one is. So without any more delays, the number one best episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 3 is Keep Calm and Flutter On. Hear me out. Now look, I understand this episode has some problems. I know Fluttershy, some can argue that Fluttershy is incredibly gullible when it comes to basically the reformment of Discord. But here's the thing. This is still Season 3. We aren't at the point of the episode where Fluttershy doesn't recognize when her kindness is being taken advantage of. I am willing to give leeway on this episode, and on top of that, Fluttershy was, when you think about basically, he either returned to Harmony, like I said, Discord kind of cheated with Fluttershy, and that Fluttershy never got involved with Discord's antics. So it would make sense why she was the one that was able to handle the task. And yes, while it seemed like Discord did have ulterior motives, it seemed like that he was definitely starting to come around when he was starting to gain Fluttershy's trust, even though we knew kind of hints of what he was doing, well, earlier in the episode. But like I said, that wasn't until after Discord started to warm up to Fluttershy. I think I said it in the initial review, but Fluttershy and Discord's relationship in the episode kind of reminded me of Alexis's relationship with Starscream in Transformers Armada, where essentially, basically, it was a misunderstood bad guy that was slowly warming up to the heroes. And Discord actually ended up pulling through, as even though he ended up pushing Fluttershy over the edge, he ended up pushing her away, and he realized her mistake. Yes, some can make the argument that it was a fast heel turn, but it was definitely Discord's first step into becoming a good guy. And it was just his first step in learning friendship. He still had a long way to go, because he was just coming out from being turned into a stone statue. So, yeah, I think Keep Calm and Flutter On basically shows that it's not just about basically knowing basically when your kindness is getting taken advantage of. That's not really the moral. It's just showing that people do deserve second chances, and that's everything in life. Now, it's not applicable in every situation, because unless they are absolute rotten scumbag pieces of shit, then that's one thing. But if somebody made a mistake and they're willing to rebuild a friendship and they're willing to put in the effort, then it's proof that people can change. And the thing is, everybody deserves a second chance. that's just basically a way of life. And honestly, I really like that aspect of the episode. And on top of that, I just also found a lot of the gags really funny, especially Rarity not putting on her best dress, but then Discord basically throwing tea on her dress. I found that to be hilarious. So yeah, keep calm and flutter on. I think much like most of Season 3, I think it's another overhated episode, and it's an episode that no matter how many times I watch it, I really thoroughly enjoy it. I love the episode. There's really just not much I can really complain about. Now, does it have some flaws? Yes, absolutely. But it doesn't take away from the overall experience, and I still enjoy the episode. And that's why I really think that Keep Calm and Flutter On is my favorite episode of Season 3. So yeah, so that was quick. I hope that was a lot faster, because every season afterwards is going to go back to the first 2 seasons. I think Season 3, I think there's just a lot of episodes in this season. I think almost half of them I really enjoyed the episode, and I just found very overhated. I think we're being realistic. The only 3 episodes I really legitimately despised were the bottom 3. Every other episode after that, I either liked the episode or I really loved it. So yeah, so Season 3, I think it's an underappreciated season. Alright, next time is going to be a good one, because next time we are going to be taking a look at my personal favorite season. Next time, I'm going to be counting down the top 24 episodes of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 4. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.